Chizuru Ichino's was a professional at being someone else, but her rent was due in 8 days and her own life was falling apart. She could fake a smile for a rental date, or a tear for a casting director, but she couldn't fake the rhythm of a heart that had forgotten how to be honest. Then came Naruto Namikaze, a man whose face was on every billboard in Tokyo, and whose presence turned the acting school into a pressure cooker. He was the only person in the room who knew how to lie better than she did, and the only one who seemed to hate it just as much. In a world built on masks, they were both desperately looking for a way to take them off. The series name is What If Naruto Was in Rent and Girlfriend. So let's start the series. The fluorescent lights in the hallway flickered for the third time that afternoon, and Chizuru Ichino's found herself counting the seconds between each flicker as a way to avoid thinking about the audition she had just finished. 17 seconds. Then 23. Then 11. The irregular rhythm matched the uneven beating of her heart. She had prepared for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of memorizing lines until she could recite them backward, of practicing facial expressions in the mirror until her cheek muscles ached, of researching the character's background until she could have written a biography. And still, when she had stood in front of the casting directors, her voice had trembled on the third line. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But she had noticed. "You're overthinking it again," her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "You have the talent, Chizuru. What you need is to trust yourself." Trust herself. That was easier said than done when rent was due in 8 days, her university tuition payment was scheduled for next month, and her rental girlfriend agency had only booked her for 3 dates this week. Each one paid enough to cover groceries, maybe a utility bill, but the gap between her income and her expenses seemed to widen every month. Chizuru leaned against the wall of the acting school corridor and closed her eyes. The building smelled like old wood and cleaning solution, a combination that had become familiar over the past 2 years. She had started taking classes here while still in high school, saving every spare yen for tuition. Now, at 21, she was one of the senior students, known for her technical precision and emotional control. What she wasn't known for was landing major roles. "Miss Ichino's?" She opened her eyes to find one of the school's administrative assistants standing nearby, holding a clipboard and looking slightly flustered. The woman's glasses had slipped down her nose, and she pushed them up with a nervous gesture. "Yes?" "The director would like to see you in his office. When you have a moment." Chizuru straightened her posture, suddenly aware of how tired she must look. "Of course. I'll go now." The walk to the director's office took her past the main rehearsal hall, where she could hear voices echoing through the closed doors. Another class was in session, probably the intermediate group. She caught fragments of dialogue, something about lost love and second chances, before the sounds faded as she turned the corner. Director Tanaka's office was a small room crowded with filing cabinets, theatrical posters, and stacks of scripts that seemed to multiply on their own. The man himself sat behind a desk that had seen better decades, his reading glasses perched on top of his head like a forgotten thought. "Ah, Ichino's," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Close the door, please." She did as asked, then sat down with her hands folded in her lap. The chair was uncomfortable, designed to keep visits short. She had sat in it many times before, usually to discuss workshop assignments or scheduling conflicts. "How was the audition?" Director Tanaka asked. "It went well, I think. I won't know for another week." He nodded, but his expression suggested he wasn't really asking about the audition. "I called you here because something has come up that I think you should know about. It's not official yet, but I wanted to give you a heads up before the rumors start spreading." Chizuru felt her stomach tighten. Rumors in an acting school were like fire in a dry forest, they spread fast and left damage in their wake. What kind of rumors? Naruto Namikaze is joining our program. The name hung in the air between them, and Chizuru found herself waiting for the punchline. Naruto Namikaze. The Naruto Namikaze. The 23-year-old actor who had burst onto the scene 3 years ago with a supporting role in a critically acclaimed drama and had since become one of the most recognizable young faces in Japanese entertainment. He had starred in 2 major films, a hit television series, and countless commercials. His face was on billboards, magazine covers, and phone cases. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. Director Tanaka spread his hands. That's the question everyone will be asking. Officially, he wants to improve his craft through formal training. His agency reached out to us specifically, which is unusual for someone at his level. Usually they'd hire private coaches. But unofficially? I don't know, he admitted. And that's what concerns me. He's bringing a lot of attention to this school, and attention can be good or bad depending on how we handle it. I wanted you to know first because you're one of our most serious students, and I suspect you'll be asked about it. Chizuru absorbed this information slowly. A celebrity joining their acting class would change everything: the dynamics, the competition, the way instructors taught. Some students would be thrilled, seeing it as an opportunity to network. Others would resent the intrusion. And everyone would be watching to see how he performed. Thank you for telling me, she said carefully. I'll keep it to myself until there's an official announcement. Director Tanaka smiled slightly. I knew I could count on your discretion. You've always been professional, Ichinos. It's one of your strengths. Professional. She had heard that word applied to her many times, and each time it felt both like a compliment and a subtle criticism. Professional meant reliable. Professional meant controlled. But did it mean memorable? Did it mean the kind of actor directors fought to cast? She wasn't sure anymore. The train ride home was crowded with evening commuters, and Chizuru pressed herself into a corner near the door, her bag clutched against her chest. The audition kept replaying in her mind, the way the casting directors had watched her with polite interest, the slight hesitation before their assistant had said, "We'll be in touch." She had learned to read those hesitations. They usually meant rejection. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from the rental girlfriend agency. One new client request for Saturday evening. Dinner and a movie. She confirmed before she could think too much about it, because thinking too much about that particular job never led anywhere good. By the time she reached her apartment, the sun had set and the street lights were flickering on one by one. Her building was a modest 3-story structure tucked between a convenience store and a small park. She had lived there for 2 years, ever since she'd started university, and she'd learned to love its quirks: the creaky elevator, the neighbor who practiced piano every Tuesday afternoon, the way the morning light came through her kitchen window at just the right angle. Tonight, though, something was different. There was a moving truck parked in front of the building, and 2 men in uniforms were carrying furniture through the front entrance. The apartment next to hers had been empty for 3 months, ever since the previous tenant, a quiet graduate student, had moved out. Chizuru had grown accustomed to the silence. She watched the movers for a moment, wondering about her new neighbor, then pushed through the door and headed for the stairs. The elevator was making an odd grinding noise, and she didn't trust it after a long day. Her apartment was small but tidy, a main room that served as living room, bedroom, and study, with a tiny kitchen and bathroom attached. She had decorated it with care, choosing neutral colors and minimal furniture, keeping it clean enough that she could invite clients over if necessary. Not that she ever did. Her rental girlfriend work stayed strictly outside her home, in restaurants and movie theaters and shopping districts, where she could play the role of attentive companion without revealing anything real about herself. She changed out of her audition clothes, a carefully chosen blouse and skirt that said "Serious Actress," without trying too hard, and into comfortable sweatpants and a loose t-shirt. Then she sat on her floor cushion with a cup of tea and opened her laptop to check her university assignments. 3 essays due next week. A group presentation to prepare. And she needed to finish reading a script for her acting class. The workload would have been manageable if she didn't also need to work most evenings and weekends. At 9 o'clock, she heard the moving truck drive away. At 9:30, she heard voices in the hallway, deep male voices, laughing about something. Her new neighbor was apparently male. She made a mental note to introduce herself tomorrow, if there was time. At 11, she finally turned off her laptop and lay down on her futon, staring at the ceiling. The day's events cycled through her mind: the audition, the conversation with director Tanaka, the news about Naruto Namikaze. She tried to imagine what it would be like to be that successful, that recognized, that secure. To walk into an audition knowing that people already wanted you. It seemed impossible, like trying to imagine a color she'd never seen. She fell asleep with the questions still turning in her mind. The next morning arrived with the sound of rain against her window and the persistent beeping of her alarm clock. Chizuru dragged herself out of bed, made coffee, and checked her phone. A message from her grandmother, asking about the audition. A reminder from the university about an upcoming deadline. And a notification from the rental girlfriend agency about a potential long-term client who had requested her specifically. She would deal with all of it later. First, she had a full day of classes, and she needed to be alert. The acting school was located in a converted warehouse district, surrounded by cafes and art galleries that catered to the creative crowd. Chizuru arrived 15 minutes early, as she always did, and found the building buzzing with an unusual energy. Students clustered in small groups in the lobby, speaking in hushed voices, their eyes darting toward the main hallway. "The news is out," she murmured to herself. She found Riko and Keed waiting outside their usual classroom. Riko was scrolling through her phone with wide eyes, while Keed was adjusting her hair in a small compact mirror for the 5th time. "Did you hear?" Riko asked, grabbing Chizuru's arm as soon as she was within reach. "Naruto Namikaze is coming here. Today. He's supposed to join our class." "I heard something about it," Chizuru said carefully. "Director Tanaka mentioned it yesterday." "And you didn't tell us?" Riko's voice rose in mock outrage. "We're supposed to be friends." "I was asked to keep it confidential until the official announcement." Keed snapped her compact shut. "Well, it's official now. Everyone's talking about it. Some people are saying he's already here, doing a private meeting with the instructors." Chizuru glanced around at the other students. The usual pre-class chatter had been replaced by an electric anticipation, everyone checking their phones and whispering to each other. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the way competition and curiosity mingled in the air. "Is it true he's worked with Takahashi Kenji?" someone nearby asked. "I heard he turned down a role in that new Watanabe film to come here. My cousin works at a talent agency and she says." The rumors spiraled, each one more elaborate than the last. Chizuru tuned them out and walked into the classroom, taking her usual seat near the window. The rain had stopped, and weak sunlight was beginning to filter through the clouds. She pulled out her script and began reviewing her lines for today's scene work. She had been assigned a monologue from a contemporary drama, a complex piece about a woman confronting her estranged father. It required vulnerability, anger, and a kind of raw emotional honesty that Chizuru struggled to access. "Miss Ichinos." The instructor's voice cut through her concentration. She looked up to find their teacher, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for brutal honesty, standing at the front of the room. Behind her, the rest of the class was filing in, taking their seats with unusual promptness. Yes? We have a new student joining us today. I'd like you to partner with him for the scene work exercise. Before Chizuru could process what was happening, a figure appeared in the doorway, and the entire room fell silent. Naruto Namikaze was taller than she'd expected. The photos in magazines made him look boyish, almost delicate, but in person he had a physical presence that filled the doorway. His blonde hair was messy in a way that seemed deliberate, and his blue eyes swept across the room with frank curiosity. He was wearing simple clothes, jeans and a gray sweater, but somehow he made them look like a fashion statement. Everyone, the instructor continued, this is Naruto Namikaze. He'll be joining our advanced scene study class. I expect you to treat him like any other student. The words were clearly meant to prevent fawning, but Chizuru could already see several students practically vibrating with excitement. Riko was mouthing something at her from across the room, but Chizuru kept her eyes forward. Naruto bowed politely. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to learning with everyone. His voice was warm and surprisingly casual, without the polished formality that Chizuru had expected from someone with his public profile. He smiled, and she noticed that the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Take a seat, the instructor said, pointing to an empty chair near the center of the room. We'll start with a warm-up exercise, and then we'll move into scene work. Naruto nodded and made his way to the seat. As he passed Chizuru's desk, his gaze flickered toward her for just a moment, a brief, assessing glance that she felt more than saw. She looked down at her script, suddenly aware of how fast her heart was beating. This was going to change everything. The warm-up exercise was standard: vocal exercises, physical stretches, a brief improvisation game designed to loosen everyone up. Chizuru participated automatically, her mind elsewhere. She watched Naruto from the corner of her eye, noting how easily he slipped into the exercises, how natural his movements seemed. He wasn't trying to show off. That was the surprising thing. Given his fame, she had expected him to dominate the room, to make everything about himself. Instead, he seemed genuinely focused on the work, participating with the same intensity as everyone else. When the scene work began, the instructor paired students off and assigned scenes. Chizuru found herself partnered with Naruto, just as the instructor had indicated, working on a two-person scene about a couple having an argument in a restaurant. Have you read this play? Naruto asked, flipping through the script she handed him. I have. It's one of my favorites. He looked up, and this time his smile seemed more genuine. Mine too. The dialogue is really sharp. I like the way the author uses silence, Chizuru said, surprising herself. She rarely volunteered opinions in class. The pauses are as important as the words. Naruto nodded slowly. Yeah. I noticed that too. The characters say a lot by not saying anything. They spent the next 20 minutes working through the scene, reading lines, discussing interpretations, trying different approaches. Chizuru found herself relaxing into the work, forgetting for a moment who she was talking to. Naruto was a good scene partner, attentive, responsive, willing to try things without ego. But every time she looked at him directly, she remembered. This was Naruto Namikaze. Famous actor. National celebrity. And he was standing 3 feet away from her, arguing about whether the character should be angry or hurt. Try it with more anger, Naruto suggested. I think she's been holding this in for so long that it comes out as fury, not sadness. Anger is easier for me, Chizuru admitted. Sadness feels too exposed. Naruto tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. Maybe that's exactly why you should try it. The vulnerability is the point. She opened her mouth to respond, but the instructor called time, and the moment dissolved. Around them, other pairs were wrapping up their scenes, some looking satisfied, others frustrated. "Good work, everyone," the instructor said. "We'll continue with these scenes on Thursday. I want you all to come prepared with a deeper understanding of your character's motivations. Not just what they want, but why they want it." The class dispersed slowly, students lingering to talk about the new arrival. Chizuru gathered her things, keeping her head down, trying to avoid the inevitable conversations. She was almost to the door when someone called her name. "Ichino-san?" She turned to find Naruto walking toward her, script still in hand. Up close, she could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the slight tiredness that his public photos always concealed. "I just wanted to say thanks for being my partner today," he said. "You're really good." The compliment caught her off guard. "Thank you? You're quite skilled yourself." He laughed, a short, self-deprecating sound. "I've had a lot of practice. But I've never really studied formally. I'm hoping this class will help me get better at the parts that don't come naturally." "Which parts are those?" He considered the question seriously. "Honesty, I guess. Real emotions instead of polished ones. My manager says I'm too good at looking like I feel things." It was such a strange thing to admit, especially to someone he just met, that Chizuru found herself momentarily speechless. She thought of her own struggles, the way she could technically execute a scene perfectly while feeling nothing at all. "I understand that," she said finally. Naruto's expression shifted, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that wasn't in any of his magazine photos, a kind of loneliness that made him look younger, almost vulnerable. Then he smiled again, and the mask slipped back into place. "Well, I'll see you on Thursday. Thanks again." He walked away, leaving Chizuru standing in the doorway with her script pressed against her chest and a strange feeling she couldn't quite name settling in her stomach. Outside, the sun had emerged fully from behind the clouds, turning the puddles on the sidewalk into mirrors. Chizuru walked toward the train station, her mind replaying the conversation over and over. Too good at looking like he feels things. She knew exactly what that meant. She had built her entire acting career, and her rental girlfriend persona, on the same skill. Looking like she felt things without actually feeling them. But why would someone as successful as Naruto Namikaze care about that? What did he need real emotions for when his polished ones had already made him famous? The question followed her all the way home, lingering in the back of her mind as she unlocked her apartment door and stepped inside. Through the wall, she heard the faint sound of someone moving around in the apartment next door. Her new neighbor was home. She made dinner, simple rice and vegetables, and ate it alone, listening to the muffled sounds of another life happening just a few feet away. Then she sat down to work on her university assignments, pushing all thoughts of acting and famous actors and complicated questions aside. But late that night, lying in her futon and staring at the ceiling, she found herself thinking about Naruto Namikaze again. Not the celebrity, not the actor from the magazines. The person she had seen for just a moment in the classroom. The person who admitted he didn't know how to be honest. She didn't know why it mattered to her. She didn't know why she cared. But she did. The next morning, Chizuru woke to the smell of coffee drifting through her open window. It was early, earlier than she usually got up on a free day, but the events of yesterday had left her restless, unable to sleep past dawn. She got up, made her own coffee, and sat by the window watching the street come alive. The convenience store owner was opening his shutters. A woman was walking her dog. Students in uniforms were heading toward the train station. Normal life, continuing as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. She could feel it, like a shift in air pressure before a storm. Her phone buzzed. A message from the rental girlfriend agency. Client confirmed for Saturday. Restaurant reservation at 7 p.m. Details sent to your email. She read the message twice, then set the phone down. Saturday. She would need to prepare, choose the right outfit, review the client's profile, practice her date persona. It was a familiar routine, one she had performed dozens of times. But today, thinking about it made her tired. She spent the morning doing laundry and cleaning her apartment, losing herself in the mindless tasks. By noon, she had finished everything and found herself with nothing to do but think. So she pulled out her acting script and began to work. The scene she had been assigned with Naruto required her to play a woman confronting her partner about infidelity. The character was hurt, angry, and desperately trying to hold on to her dignity. It was a complex emotional landscape, and Chizuru knew she could hit all the technical beats, the vocal shifts, the physical tension, the timing of the silences. But something was missing. She read through the lines again, then again, trying to find the emotional core. The character's pain should be raw, overwhelming, impossible to hide. But every time Chizuru tried to access that feeling, she hit a wall. What do I have to be hurt about? She stood up, frustrated, and began pacing the room. The apartment felt too small, too quiet. She needed air. Grabbing her jacket, she headed outside without a clear destination. The afternoon was cool and crisp, the kind of autumn day that made her feel nostalgic for reasons she couldn't explain. She walked past the convenience store, past the park, past the train station, letting her feet carry her wherever they wanted. 30 minutes later, she found herself standing outside the acting school. She hadn't meant to come here. It was a free day, no classes, no rehearsals. But the building had become a kind of second home over the years, a place where she felt purposeful even when everything else felt uncertain. The front door was unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped inside. The building was quieter than usual, the hallways empty. She walked toward the main rehearsal hall, drawn by some impulse she didn't fully understand. Through the door, she could hear someone speaking. "And I told you, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not." The voice was familiar. Chizuru paused, her hand hovering over the door handle. Naruto Namikaze was inside, practicing alone. She knew she should leave. Eavesdropping on a private rehearsal was inappropriate, unprofessional. But something kept her rooted to the spot, listening. "I've been lying to everyone. To myself. And I'm tired of it." His voice cracked on the last word, not with theatrical precision, but with something real. Something genuine. Chizuru felt the sound of it in her chest. There was a long silence, and then Naruto's voice again, lighter this time. "No, that's not right. Too melodramatic. I need to find the quiet pain, not the loud pain." She heard footsteps, then the creak of a chair. The moment had passed. But Chizuru couldn't move. Without warning, the door swung open, and she found herself face to face with Naruto Namikaze. He looked as surprised as she felt. His hair was disheveled, and there was a smudge of something, ink, on his cheek. He was wearing the same jeans from yesterday and a different sweater, this one dark blue. "Ichino-san?" His voice was cautious. "Were you listening?" The honest answer would incriminate her. The dishonest answer would be obvious. She chose something in between. "I came to practice. I didn't realize anyone else was here." Naruto studied her for a long moment, and Chizuru had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her. Then he stepped back, holding the door open. Well, there's plenty of room. Come in. She hesitated. I don't want to disturb you. You're not disturbing me. I was just working on a monologue from my next project. It's not going well. Chizuru walked past him into the rehearsal hall. The room was large and open, with mirrors on one wall and a piano in the corner. The afternoon light came through high windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. What's the monologue about? She asked, setting her bag down near the door. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture that seemed surprisingly awkward for someone so famous. It's about a man who has to tell his family that he's been lying to them for years. About his job, his life, everything. The scene is the moment when he finally comes clean. That sounds challenging. It is. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out I'm not great at playing honest characters. Funny, right? Chizuru thought about what she had heard through the door. The crack in his voice, the rawness of it. I thought it sounded good. The part one heard. Naruto looked at her sharply. You heard that? Only a little. I wasn't intentionally eavesdropping. He held her gaze for a moment, then sighed. It's fine. I was too loud anyway. He walked to the center of the room and sat down on the floor, stretching his legs out in front of him. Can I ask you something, Ichino-san? Depends on the question. When you're acting, how do you access the emotions? The real ones, I mean. Not the ones you can fake with technique. Chizuru moved to sit across from him, keeping a respectful distance. I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask. It's something I struggle with too. But you're good at it. I watched you yesterday. The way you handled the silence in that scene, it was perfect. You made the pauses mean something. Technically perfect, she said quietly. But technique isn't the same as truth. Naruto's eyes widened slightly, and Chizuru realized she had said something she usually kept private. She looked away, focusing on the pattern of the wooden floor. Sorry, she added. That was too honest. No, it's refreshing. He leaned back on his hands, studying the ceiling. Everyone around me is always telling me how great I am. My manager, my publicist, my fans. It's hard to find people who will tell me the truth. Chizuru felt a strange mix of sympathy and discomfort. It must be difficult, living in that kind of bubble. It is. More than I realized. He was quiet for a moment, then looked at her again. That's part of why I came here, actually. To get out of the bubble. To be around people who care about the craft, not just the fame. Something clicked into place. So it's true that you came here to improve your acting? Naruto hesitated. Partly. There's more to it, but... He shrugged. I can't really talk about it yet. The honesty in his voice was disarming. Chizuru found herself wanting to trust him, which was dangerous. Trust in her world was something earned slowly, through repeated proof of reliability. You don't have to explain, she said. I was just curious. I know. He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. Everyone's curious. That's part of the problem. They sat in silence for a while, the afternoon light shifting around them. Chizuru was aware of the distance between them, maybe 3 feet, and the strange intimacy of sharing a quiet moment with someone she barely knew. I should probably go, she said eventually. Let you get back to your practice. You can stay. If you want to practice too, I mean. We could work on our scene for Thursday. The offer was casual, but Chizuru sensed there was more behind it. A desire for company, perhaps. A need for normal interaction. All right, she said. Let's work on the scene. They spent the next hour running lines, trying different interpretations, arguing about character motivations. It was the most engaged Chizuru had felt in weeks, her usual self-consciousness fading as she focused on the work. Naruto was a demanding scene partner, not in a harsh way, but in his insistence on finding the truth in every moment. He refused to settle for surface-level emotions, pushing both of them to dig deeper. Try it again, he said for the third time, after Chizuru delivered a line that she knew was technically perfect but emotionally flat. Think about what your character is feeling in this moment. Not what she's saying, what she's feeling. She's angry, Chizuru said. She's been betrayed. Yes, but underneath the anger, what's there? Chizuru closed her eyes, trying to access the layer beneath her usual interpretation. Fear, she said slowly. She's afraid that she wasn't enough. That she'll never be enough. When she opened her eyes, Naruto was nodding. Exactly. Now say the line again, but let the fear drive it. The anger is just the surface. She took a breath and delivered the line again. This time, something shifted. The words came out slightly different, not as controlled, not as precise, but somehow more real. Naruto's expression changed. That's it, he said quietly. That's the truth. Chizuru felt heat rise to her cheeks. She looked away, suddenly self-conscious. It's still not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be honest. The word hung in the air between them. Honest. It was what she struggled with, what he struggled with, what both of them were apparently seeking. I should go, she said again, gathering her things. I have assignments to work on. Naruto stood up, brushing dust from his jeans. Thanks for practicing with me. It helped. You helped me too. The admission came out before she could stop it. He smiled, and for a moment she saw that same vulnerability from yesterday, the loneliness that lurked beneath his confident exterior. Maybe we can do this again sometime? Practice together, I mean. Chizuru hesitated. Every instinct told her to maintain distance, to keep her professional and personal lives separate. But another part of her, the part that had felt more alive in the past hour than she had in weeks, wanted to say yes. Maybe, she said carefully, if our schedules align. Naruto's smile widened slightly, as if he understood exactly how noncommittal her answer was. I'll take that as a maybe yes. It's a maybe. Better than a definite no. She couldn't help smiling at that, just a little. I'll see you on Thursday, Namikaze-san. As she walked out of the rehearsal hall and into the fading afternoon light, Chizuru was aware of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It was fragile and uncertain, like a flame in the wind. But it was there. And for now, that was enough. The walk home took longer than usual. Chizuru took a different route, wandering through side streets she rarely visited, letting the city wash over her. The sky had turned orange and pink with sunset, and the air had that crisp autumn quality that made her feel nostalgic for moments she hadn't lived yet. By the time she reached her apartment building, the streetlights were on and the convenience store was glowing with fluorescent light. She climbed the stairs slowly, her legs tired from the long walk. Outside her door, she paused. Through the wall of the neighboring apartment, she could hear music, something soft and instrumental, barely audible. Her new neighbor was home again. She unlocked her door and stepped inside, closing it quietly behind her. The apartment was dark, and she stood for a moment in the entryway, not bothering to turn on the lights. The day replayed in her mind, The conversation with Naruto, the scene practice, the way he had looked at her when she finally delivered the line with real emotion. It meant nothing, she told herself. He was just a scene partner. A classmate. A famous actor who would probably forget about her once the novelty of acting school wore off. But even as she thought it, she knew she didn't believe it. Something had shifted today, something she couldn't quite name. The careful walls she had built around herself had developed a crack, small but significant. The question was what would come through it. That night, Chizuru dreamed of the rehearsal hall. She was standing alone on the wooden floor, the mirrors reflecting endless versions of herself. Each reflection was slightly different, different expressions, different postures, different masks. And somewhere in the distance, she could hear a voice calling her name. She woke at dawn with the sounds still echoing in her ears.